Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Amy Alkon is an independent investigative science writer specializing in applied science, which is using scientific evidence to solve real world problems. Amy critically evaluates and synthesizes research across disciplines and then translates it into everyday language, empowering regular people to make scientifically informed decisions for the best of their health and their well being. Amy is the author of several best-selling books, including Ckology, How to Live with Guts and Confidence, and most recently, her science help book, Going Menopostal, What You and Your Doctor Need to Know About the Real Science of Menopause and Perimenopause. Amy has given 2 TED Talks and has been profiled in the New York Times, Time Magazine, the Washington Post, the Independent UK, and Macleans, among others. Amy has also appeared on numerous national TV and radio shows, including Good Morning America, Today, NPR, CNN, Nightline, Anderson Cooper, Coast to Coast, and Canada's The Agenda with Steve Paikin, along with podcasts by Adam Carolla, Joe Rogan, Michael Shermer, Robert Wright, and Scott Barry Kaufman. Wow, that's incredible. You can follow Amy on Twitter at Amy Alkon. Amy Alkon, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you. I want to add one more thing to your lovely introduction. And said I will have a Substack probably out today. It's Science Made Practical, and to subscribe to it, it's subscribers at amyalkon.net. So it's amyalkon.net. And thank you for that lovely intro. Oh,
Beautiful.
It's free and it's twice monthly. Sorry, I forgot to say.
You are prolific. You are around everywhere. And I really love your new book. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation today. When I'm preparing for these conversations, yeah, it's beautiful. I love the cover too, by the way.
I designed the cover with little Shiva. She's great graphic designer. We did this together, and it was really important to me. It didn't look like ladies' bathroom smell. That's how I think of a lot of menopause books.
That's great.
Because
that's
I'm not
awesome.
willing to be all, menopause, like, ooh, icky, the change, like, no. So, it's my attitude's like my earrings, which are like coffee table sized, red lipstick. Don't go quietly, ladies. Let's be who we are, be healthy.
I love it.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. When I'm preparing for these interviews, I like to listen to my guests' recent content, you doing interviews about your recent book and that kind of thing. And I listened to a few of those, but I did, see that you were on Joe Rogan. I decided this is 2017, but let me go back and listen to this. I am so glad I went back and listened to the episode. First of all, it was so funny to hear the two of you talking about like politics and racial things and people getting canceled. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my goodness, you guys, this is 2017. You have no idea what's coming down the track in a few years when COVID hits.
I'm a big individual rights person too. I defend people's individual rights, even if I think you're kind of an idiot, because you should be able to speak. Free speech is vital to democracy and to this country continuing as the place we want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The next funny part is you guys are talking about diet and how you've been on a ketogenic diet for 8 years at that point, which you knew, Carrie Taubes and talked to him back in 2009. And Joe Rogan's like, we're actually going to have this guest on. He's a doctor. He's kind of a nut job, I think. He just like lifts a lot of weight and he sets all these records and he just eats meat. What's his name? Something Baker. I don't know what his name is. Something I'm like, oh my goodness. That was the first time I've ever heard of a carnivore diet was Joe Rogan hosting Sean Baker, which was just going to happen right after
I was wondering, who is that? I know who that is. Yeah. And so I started eating low carb in March of 2009. I knew Gary already and I knew the work, but you're able to amortize your shitty American diet, when you're younger, if you're genetically lucky, for quite some time. But I wish I had eaten this way throughout my lifespan because I'd be some kind of Wonder Woman rock star.
Totally. Yeah. I'm super jealous whenever I'm inviting I'm talking to parents and they're raising their children largely in this space, like at least low carbohydrate. And they don't have a lot of crap. And like you hear about these kids and how well they're doing in school and they don't have acne and they're like doing great in sports. And like, man, I could have used that. That could have been a nice replacement for all the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and skim milk I drank growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I wish on the skim milk. Oh my God. So we're this really rich country. We starve the children. We give them milk. We remove the nutrients from milk and then we give it to them. I mean, this is like, it's so absurd if you think about it that way, and then the lunches where they have like low fat food. Oh my God, you're a kid. You have a developing brain and body. You need fat, you need protein, don't starve the children. Job one.
Yeah, totally. No, we've done a terrible job with that. And that's why I love your research and how you approach things. Before we dive into your latest book, all about menopause and perimenopause, which again is absolutely wonderful, I do want to ask you, I love this story. Can you tell us how you got into, the writing that you got yourself into? I believe it was in New York City when you had a kind of funny idea.
Yeah, and I just want to say, so guys, don't tune out, because I also expose all the lack of science in most of our medical care. So this is more than just, hey, here's your hormones, lady. So this is an accidental career I have. I thought I would write maybe movies and TV. I worked at an ad agency right out of college, producing commercials. A really good one, Ogilvy and Mather. I got to fly around and record exciting people. And then my friends and I had these madcap friends, and we decided we would do this prank in New York to make people laugh. We'd sit out in the street corner, like Lucy from Peanuts, if you're listening, you're American. She had an advice 5-cent sign, but so we decided no one would even give us a nickel. So we had free advice from a panel of experts presented by the advice ladies. And we sat out on West Broadway and Broome in Soho with the magazine rack for a table. We were all in our, I wear evening gowns as day wear. I didn't then, but I still had like fancy black hat or something on. And we thought people would pass us and laugh, but New York, the sign says free, they line up around the block. And so our sign said things, I hadn't taken psychology even in college. And the sign said things like wigs and beards, proper spelling, directions. It was not like, ask me your high level psychological problems, but people would ask us about things like their breakup. And I thought, oh, you ass, you don't know anything. How irresponsible. And so I'm a lifelong nerd. I read books my whole life. That was all I did as a child. And so I read through all of psychology, and I was just shocked. Like Freud just made stuff up, like just invented it whole, like what the hell? And I discovered Albert Ellis, who is, he's the co-founder of rational emotive behavioral therapy, which is the better kind of cognitive behavioral therapy. He and Aaron Beck co-founded that at the same time. And so anyway, there's a point to this, which is that, so I do this with them. I end up getting us a deal with De Niro, and a book deal and a column in the New York Daily News, because somebody wrote this tiny New York Times story on us. And I'm an enterprising person. I'm from not a wealthy family, so I had to be creative, getting jobs and stuff. I thought like, oh, I'm going to run with this. And so we do all this stuff, but one of my partners has a drug problem. She ends up dying. It's so horrible. And so I carried on the column. I was the only one who wanted to do it. I syndicated myself to a bunch of papers. And I also felt the same sense of responsibility to have my column be based in something. Oh, and Ellis actually was a fan of my column before I met him. He read my column in the Daily News. It was reason-based. And so he loved that. And I couldn't believe it. So he was a mentor, and he actually told me not to get a PhD, which was very important information. I was a little credentialist, like I'm nobody, no credentials. And, he said it would be a waste of time basically. And actually it would have been worse than that, because if you have a PhD, you have to narrowcast. You're in one area of medicine. It's very siloed. Maybe you move out a little bit, but you don't do what I've done throughout my career, which has become informed transdisciplinarily. So I know cognitive neuroscience. I know I'm an evolutionary psychology expert. I'm in that field very, even though I'm not a professor, I'm part of that. I was president of one of the societies as a non-academic. And so as I was doing this, I became increasingly concerned with getting better at vetting the science. And then, I studied stats, and I did everything I could. But in 2007, I met actually a friend of Gary's, Sandra Greenland, who's one of the top epidemiologists and biostatisticians in the world. He actually was very generous, coached me in how to critically evaluate research, what the methodology should be, how you assess it, and also started sending me articles on the fraud and error and abuse in medicine, the methodological crap. And so without all of this, I wouldn't have been able to do this book, and I wouldn't have known how medicine is not what we're told it is. Evidence-based medicine, most of our medical care is not based in or supported by adequate evidence. This is from the US National Academy of Medicine, not just my opinion. And that was 2011. So medicine's become much more complex since then. So it is likely this is a much higher figure. Plus, now I became this medical expert across areas. It's sort of incredible, because this was an accident, becoming medicine and then the career to begin with. And it started when I had a hot flash. I became this expert in menopause and perimenopause. But I will hear a doctor, somebody who's head of endocrinology or head of hematology, they'll say something and I realize that they're wrong, and I can tell them why they're wrong. And I don't always do this because nobody likes to know it all. The patient who's supposed to be subordinate to you who says, well, no, actually, estrogen would not raise sex hormone binding globulin. It would if I were taking oral estrogen, but I'm not. I'm taking transdermal, which would raise it a negligible amount. And it's like, can someone please be the genius, know my medical care better than I do? Know what I should be taking, what drugs I should be taking after my corneal endothelium transplant better than I do. But, there's some myths about our medical care that we believe, like the doctors base care on, evidence, and treat you accordingly, when actually in med schools, doctors are not trained in how to read research. So they don't read research because they don't know how. They don't begin to know how. Where I look at a study, I'm like, what the hell? No, what they do? Forget a control group? Doctors, they don't even know how to look for one. They don't know how to read it, like anything in a study, or and they don't have time to be fair. I go to Kaiser Permanente. My gynecologist in the book, he's a guy. No, you don't have to have a guy who's the person is the same, parts as you. It's like, do you need a guy with a glioma if you've got one? I only go to an oncologist who had the same brain tumor I do, because he truly understands. Like, read a book, like to do some clinical rotations. So, my gynecologist, I was mad at him at first because he didn't know the science, but then I learned almost no gynecologists or doctors throughout medicine have any training in menopause or perimenopause. I mean, it's the most unbelievable thing. This means it is a violation of medical ethics for them to treat you, but this is business as usual in these gynecology departments. It's truly terrible. And so, this is why I wrote this book, because I went to Kaiser and I fought 3 battles to get evidence-based care in perimenopause, to get what's called oral micronized progesterone. This is the second hormone of the menstrual cycle. There are 2, estrogen and then progesterone. There are 2 phases. To get the oral micronized progesterone, this FDA-approved drug, in the amount I needed and get it covered, Kaiser only had on their formulary, I mean, this is how obscene medicine is. They only had medroxyprogesterone acetate, which is a knockoff of progesterone. It's a synthetic drug. Now, that's okay if it's healthy and helpful, but it is not. It does some of the things that progesterone does. It does protect bone, but it is harmful to the cardiovascular system and the brain, and it raises your risk of breast cancer because it preferentially binds with the wrong receptor in the breast, the glucocorticoid stress hormone receptor. I mean, this is egregious. That is a drug Kaiser was giving all their female patients, and they didn't know that you need in perimenopause, you generally need progesterone. You're generally missing progesterone, not estrogen. And, they see the whole hormonal profile of it wrong. And so I can talk about some of that, but this is the shit show. And so what happened was I present them with all these randomized controlled trials and evidence for progesterone safety. And I fight and fight. And so they decide they're going to cover it. The woman gyno boss in the book was actually very respectful of me. They met with me. They listened. I'm very irritating. When I'm with science, I'm with science, like I don't put it down. And so after this, because I'm a naive little Pollyanna from the Midwest, I said, oh, so you'll, now that you have the science, you'll cover all your female patients and give them this, right? I mean, what an idiot. No, of course not. And so for me to not do this book, when I had the generosity of Sandra Greenland behind me, for all these years, critically, like looking at my work, kicking my ass when I, didn't do something in a way he thought was good, which is wonderful. And I couldn't let women, it'd be like watching them from across the street walk into an open manhole and not saying anything. So this is a book, I call it the book monster. It's the most horrible and stupid and important thing I've ever done. To write a book like this, my joke was I forgot to take endocrinology, which is the study of hormones, when I forgot to go to med school. But I learned this. And when you learn, like Gary and Nina Teicholz, Gary Taubes, my friends, when you are not part of the medical orthodoxy, you approach things with more vision than people who are in it, because you haven't gone to med school where it's big and shiny and lots of people paid for it. And, how would they teach you, just things that aren't even factual, but they are. And so as a person who's not part of that, I also look to the foundations. Well, what is a hormone? How do they work? What's the research from the past? What's the history in this field? And if you look at that, sometimes you find research that someone did that was really amazing, but they didn't have tools, modern tools, to look at hormones or whatever, at that time. And then it needed to be replicated in modern times with modern methods and the tools we have, technology, and they're just lost. And sometimes those studies tell you something about our physiology or what might work. So this is important. It isn't, oh, here's some solid evidence, but all of that combines, to tell you to look in certain directions. So that's the sort of thing you can do. Or I did an 8-year deep dive into this. And so doctors can't do that. So this is why I, without arrogance or, I know more than any doctor, because I've done this deep level of research, plus the transdisciplinary research. So I put in the book how to eat, how to exercise, the most powerful and efficient ways, because we're humans. We're not saints. You're going to join a gym. Here's what'll happen for many people. You'll go for 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, and then you won't go. Then you'll feel really bad because you're not going to the gym and you're paying for it. Then because you feel bad, you might eat cookies. I mean, it's so, what I do, I don't go to a gym. Oh my God, I'm not strapping on Lululemon, going somewhere in LA where, no. I have like a weight graveyard here. I lift weights on my floor, and I have a barbell on a stand my best friend gave me, and so that's my house. And I can do that, while I'm here during the day. And this is the sort of thing that's doable. And same thing with carnivore diet. My God, I eat grease all day. It's wonderful. I wake up and I eat 2 pounds of butter. It's delicious. I love it. It's fantastic. So this is a diet that's doable. And Gary Taubes talks about the way I think also, which is that you're not denying yourself stuff. What you're doing is you're avoiding things that would harm you. And this is very important.
Yeah, well said. That's amazing. And I do want to talk to you about the strength training. I believe you got some of your principles from Slow Burn, a book written by one of our former guests, in part by one of our former guests, Fred Hahn, which is the kind of strength training that I recommend. It sounds like that's where you got some of those concepts from.
Oh, yeah. So this is where I started. Michael Eads, who's a friend of mine who co-authored Protein Power with his doctor wife, who's also, they're both awesome in all of this.
They're amazing.
Check the cardiology chapters in my book. So they wrote a book with Fred Hahn. They were very impressed by him. And so this is the first I heard of it. I had a former science podcast. I do everything before it makes money. So I had a podcast before podcasts made money. And I had Fred on my podcast, but it was because I read his book, which Mike wrote the science for. And Michael Eads, you can find his the Arrow Substack, which he charges for.
Yeah, it's super good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Excellent. I recommend it. And I don't recommend spending money on a lot of things. But so anyway, he Gary took physics, and one of those physics, Mike studied engineering. So to have that kind of background is very important in reading science, trade-offs, all sorts of things that they're built into you in evaluating science. Mike's very rigorous. So I saw that made sense. And this is slow speed weight training where you have weights heavy for you, maybe like about 10 times. So you can only do about 10 reps very slowly, like 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down, till what's called muscle failure. And this is how your muscles, through the process that goes on, you've signaled them, hey, we've got some heavy shit for you to carry around. So your muscles, you have strength and quality, as opposed to, we can get into the bullshit that is like the idea that bone density is a sign that you're not going to break bones or will break bones if it's low. It's a risk factor, but there's a whole bullshit industry of osteoporosis. But I want to say, so since that time, I read all this science on exercise, and some of the best is out of England. And these guys are kind of pariahs, James Steele and Fisher. And this guy, Pock, he's got a Greek name. They're terrific, and so I looked at that. And then Brad Shanefield is another. I looked at this research, and I came upon this guy, Drew Bay, Baye. He is the single best guy on this. He's got great character. And so he's the only non-scientist I quote in the book, because he is so rigorous and also emphasizes safety, which is very important, especially for women. One of the things that he advises, like me, it's like, who are humans in reality? We're chimps. We're lazy, grabby, impulsive jerks, and so what you want to do is what I want to do, which is like, oh my God, oh, this is a cool kind of weightlifting. I'm going to like grab some heavy weights and I'm going to do this. And he says, no, what you do is you use light weights and you get good form, you lift it. And so this is very important. You do bilateral weightlifting. His emphasis on safety like this, it's so vital, especially, if you're just starting out. So this is the kind of thing, that I learned from him. And you can see his form, the slow speed. He does this. You can look up YouTube videos. He also has a very good subscription thing called the Hit List at bay.com. And believe me, I don't sell people stuff. These two guys, they're excellent. They're excellent. And so Mike Eads and Mary Dan also is part of the newsletter. She's but Michael, I don't know how he does it. He's got, there must be like elves in a closet because he turns out a lot of very good information every week. So I went on a little bit there, but I hope that sort of answered the question.
No, yeah, that was cool. No, I love that. It's cool information. It's a way that I train my clients as well after being taught something completely different. So I was just curious to hear about that. I do want to get back to menopause. In your book, you kind of, there's like 3 different myths. You mentioned myths earlier, and there's 3 major ones you kind of identify. Can you talk about what those myths are when it comes to menopause and perimenopause?
Well, okay, these affect all of us. These are the 3 myths of our medical care. And the first is that doctors make decisions based on scientific evidence. They don't know what the science says. They can't begin to read it because they aren't trained to read it in medical school. This is a horrible moral failing of medical schools. And some people just accept it. I quote Andrew Gelman, who's a statistician in my book. He's in Sanders Field and everything. He says, well, medical schools just don't teach this, how to read studies. Well, that's not a reason to persist with this. You have doctors who can't read evidence? No, this is terrible. And so then the other myths are that doctors are trained in diagnostic reasoning. This is the thinking, if you saw Dr. House, where they get to the nature of your condition, the underlying cause of your condition, and treat that instead of treating a symptom. Now, why is that important? Well, okay, you've got terrible headaches, really terrible headaches. You go to the hospital, to the emergency room. And so, oh, it's just stress. It's just stress. We're going to give you some medication and send you home. They're treating the symptom. But what needs to be understood is why do you have headaches? Do you really have a bad way of coping at work? Or do you have a glioma? I keep bringing up gliomas. That's but it's such a great word. Despite it being horrifying. And so if you medicate that headache away, what you'll do, it won't be medicated away forever, but you're delaying your ability to have your life saved. With some of the incredible cancer treatment now. I mean, this is terrible. It's terrible, terrible. And this is a factor in menopause and perimenopause. Doctors are afraid of hormones. It's not scientific. It's based on egregious, dishonestly announced, terrible methodology in the Women's Health Initiative study in 2002. And so doctors will use a thing that decreases hot flashes. Hot flashes, to describe that. So I'm sitting here in Venice. It's like 55 year round. I'm in Venice, California, sea breeze, nice and everything. And all of a sudden I am locked in a car trunk in the Everglades. Like, what the hell? And I thought, oh no, I think this is a hot flash. It's so horrible. So that's when I wanted to go to my doctor and say, I'm uncomfortable. What should I do? But I knew better, and so doctors will give women antidepressants that have all sorts of terrible side effects. Like, like killing your sex life is one of them. You become like sexually numb. And, there are all sorts of reasons you don't want to take them if you aren't, like if it's not a last resort for you for your mental health. And so they do decrease hot flashes, but what they don't do is all the things that a proper hormonal prescription would. Progesterone, which is the hormone that goes missing in perimenopause. This protects your bones. It helps you sleep. It helps your mental health. It's like I call it the body's Valium. It promotes the GABA, which is that hormone that helps sleep, and then gives us a sense of calm. And so what happens for a lot of women in perimenopause happened to me. I had terrible symptoms. Now, not all women are symptomatic, but I had these inexplicable rages. I'm from the Midwest. I'm a nice person. I talk to everyone. I love people. Like, hi, oh, can I talk? I'm like a barnacle, especially as an author, because you're home alone. Like someone that's passing on this. Hi, oh, I love your pants. Like, talk to me. So I'm not the person who's like misanthropic and hateful, but that's what I became. I'm in the hardware store, and my dad and grandpa, they were like Mr. Fix-Its. You'd see them on Saturday, like caulking in their hands. Some guy was like that behind me in line, and I see him and I think, like, Dad, like dad too, dad, whatever. And so, because my dad's was in Michigan, he's not here now. But the guy starts to hum. Oh my God. I go from like, oh, look, it's dead, to like, I must find a heavy object. Well, is there a cinder block? Because I need to bludgeon this man to death because he's humming. Like, you're like wired in a way, you're like crazy. And it's so like, I was so ashamed. Luckily, I started reading the research and I saw that this is a symptom. So, women who get like this, they lose their marriages, their jobs, they have bad relationships with their children. And it's because we see this as, oh my God, you're a horrible bitch all of a sudden. When in fact, it's like someone who needs dialysis. You're something in your body is not right. And like, can we help you fix this, or have compassion for you instead of thinking you're a lazy, angry bitch? And the lazy comes from the brain fog from not sleeping, which progesterone also helps. And I want to just explain why this goes wrong in perimenopause. So perimenopause is seen as, by doctors wrongly, as this sort of like estrogen, like sand in an hourglass, just petering out. No, what happens in perimenopause is that the feedback mechanisms that worked before for your menstrual cycle to function properly, they go wacky. And so estrogen actually will spike and dive. And this is what causes hot flashes, the spike and dive. It releases stress hormones. People don't understand that they're not just hot flashes, not just uncomfortable, but harmful, because you have a chronic release of stress hormones. And this is, over time, this is unhealthy and promotes the stuff we know about the inflammation, everything from, when people eat a high carbohydrate diet. So
never considered that. That's so interesting. I've never considered that.
Isn't it fascinating? And so it's terrible because doctors don't know. So what happens in perimenopause? There's the estrogen phase of the menstrual cycle. Estrogen rises, and there's a follicle, that the little egg sac, and you have a bunch of follicles, and one fights to be like, I'm the top dog follicle, I'm the strongest and most robust. And that follicle is supposed to rupture, and there's an egg that gets released, goes down to the uterus, like any sperm, and then if not, then there's a period, the uterine lining is released. That's your period. So in perimenopause, you start having these little runt follicles come up. They're wimpy, and they won't rupture. And so if you have no rupture, you don't have progesterone, because progesterone is made of the litter, the egg sac litter. That is what progesterone is made of. If you have a little teeny sac, you don't have progesterone for enough days, even if it does rupture. And then if it doesn't rupture at all, you have what's called an anovulatory cycle, no ovulation. And so without progesterone, you lack the protection for your breasts from cancer, your uterus from cancer. The endometrial lining of your uterus is where, you want to be protected against that cancer there. And you have, you're not able to sleep, you have brain fog, and maybe you're angry, and all sorts of other things are left unprotected, and you're symptomatic in many ways. And so what doctors don't know is that progesterone is what goes missing. If you prescribe estrogen to a woman like me in perimenopause, I had very high levels of estrogen throughout my life. I think that we can guess it from, I have the body shape of like the Jessica Rabbit body, 0.7 waist to hip ratio from my friend Dev Singh's research, like Dev Singh in evolutionary psychology. That's, it's likely high estrogen. And so when my body would go spike and then dive and there's nothing there, this chemical freak out would happen. And so this was this thing that led me to be especially angry bitch. Sorry, I think I lost my train of thought there a little bit, but I had always slept well. I was waking up 5 or 6 times a night. The angry thing, it was really, really horrible. And when I fought for and got 300 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone from Kaiser, you take this at night because it can make you drowsy. Drowsy at night is good. This is the amount that's needed, not the amount they give in America, for you to know that first of all, to sleep and to have the symptoms alleviated. And you may need more, but it's really hard to get from doctors. I could have used more. Anyway, but this is the amount that protects you, because we don't know what our metabolism of steroid hormones is, most of us. And so you need to have enough progesterone that your breasts and endometrium are protected. And so 300 is safe. And in the US, because of this whole fear provoked by the distorted, dishonest Women's Health Initiative study announced in 2002 and then discredited by 2004 for these reasons, but that didn't get transmitted around the world like the initial one did. Women are afraid of taking hormones. Doctors are afraid of prescribing them. The vaginal estradiol that they prescribe, so there's different kinds. The most healthy systemic kind is a patch. You have a sticker, and if you want the most estrogen out of your patch, you put it on your butt. I have medical tape over them so they don't fall off in the shower. It's really sexy. There's also, women have vaginal atrophy and bladder atrophy. The urinary, the whole mechanism down there, without estrogen keeping things moist and doing the jobs it does down there, you can have really terrible vaginal dryness. Like picture, you guys aren't gonna like this, picture a Cadillac that's a little too big for the garage, like getting in the garage. I mean, it's really painful, really terrible. And so, if that's not happening, if you're not getting, that area covered by the systemic estrogen, you take the patch estrogen. Vaginal estrogen is local estrogen. There's one kind, E string, that is systemic, but yeah, that's one. That's like a ring, but you have this cream that you stick up there. And the prescription is for the initial doses daily, which the head of Kaiser Endocrinology here in West LA has not a clue. She's the head of gynecology. She thinks that you start out with the 3 times a week. No. You start with daily. And then you go to 3 times a week. Now, why 3 times a week? No reason. Did they decide it was better? It was good? It was helpful? No, because doctors are afraid of prescribing estrogen. It's unwarranted. And I was afraid of it too, because the Women's Health Initiative study was out in 2002. I was not close to menopause. I just thought, estrogen's Satan, never taking it. That's not scientific, Amy. So I read the studies for the book and I thought, wow, if you take estrogen, initiate it right at menopause, or very close, menopause being 12 months without a period, it will protect you in important ways throughout your lifespan. Now, you have to be healthy when you take it. You can't have a bunch of plaque buildup. I have tests in Going Menopostal that actually the EADS consulted on. We talked about this, and they looked over the tests and actually added some to tell what is your health at this time. Is it safe for you to take? And so what's happened is, since over from 2002 to now, the menopause societies say, there's not a stopping rule anymore. We don't say taper at 60 like we used to. That women it can be decided on individual health, to look at a woman's individual health, how are you metabolically healthy, look at other measures, and then continue it throughout her lifespan if she can. And the reason for this is that estrogen protects your cardiovascular system. And the way it does that, there are receptors in your endothelium, the arterial lining for estrogen. And if you start taking estrogen after menopause, right at menopause, they're preserved. Or you want to take it within 6 years, ideally, maybe 10. You need to be healthy. It's not like, well, what if it's 10 years and 2 months? You need to look at what is your health to see if it'll be helpful. Because if you take it when you're already sort of broken, you have some diseases, it may be harmful or just do nothing. And so this vaginal estrogen, I'm going to have to fight. I take that now. I don't get the estrogen I take. I have 2. This is like a huge amount of estrogen. I have 2 Climera patches. It's 0.1 milligram of Climera. No, a woman would take 1 of these at most. But because I have high sex hormone binding globulin, because I eat a carnivore diet, it's like 218, which is like stratospheric. What I know that doctors don't know is that I get almost none of the estrogen I take. And I'll tell you how fear-based medicine is. So this doctor, 10 doctors, I go through 10 doctors, they all refuse to prescribe me the estrogen, the estradiol. That's what the hormone in your body is, and the drug that's the same. My guy doctor, it was his idea that I would have 2 patches. And I'm busy finishing the book, and he goes on leave. He's still on leave. I'm like, I don't even believe in God. I'm like, please come back. Please. Like, my medical care is ruined because I have to fight these horrible battles with people who they're ignorant of the science, and so, I have the doctor giving me just the like 3 doses, and then the two Climera patches. So there's something called pharmaceutical minimum. There's it's called C minimum. There's a C average, C max. And this is, if you take, this is, the FDA puts out sheets on this with the manufacturer. If you take this drug, here's what the minimum in the week should be. And then here's the average, here's the maximum. And so for Climera, the minimum is 71. My reading was 17. This is lower than a woman not taking hormones. And this is not for one dose. This is 2 Climera patches. Oh my God.
Wow.
So this doctor, who was the only one who would actually, I had to fight so hard to get the 2. They're all saying, oh, it's a super physiologic dose. But no, what that means is like you're taking, I don't want to like have a baby. I didn't want to have a baby when people had babies, like the age of, I don't like children. They're loud, sticky, and expensive. I mean, if you have a photo of one, I like them. They're cute. If there's no noise. Anyway, so I'm irascible. So no, I don't want to have a baby. What I want is to have my estrogen level at a level where to protect my bones. Oh, I didn't finish that. You need to be taking it at 70 or 79 when you're going to break a bone. And if you stop it at 60, like, by the way, the head of Kaiser Gynecology just advised me 2 months ago. She said, you have to taper off at 60. Like, hello, what, we're practicing like it's 2002? Like, I mean, if you didn't read the science, which she said she did, bullshit. At least read the Menopause Society practice bulletins, 2017, 2022. They say there's no stopping rule anymore. I mean, it's a horrible violation of medical ethics and of betrayal of patients, because I know the science. And so when they say stuff like that to me, I just ignore them. But other patients, I mean, it's so plausible that they would know something, so I got in the vaginal estradiol. So this woman's saying it's super physiologic. It would be for another patient. That means it would be like this outrageous dose that's, over would be over the maximum. Well, not for me, because I also I'm a CYP3A4 rapid metabolizer. That's a liver enzyme. I had something done. If you can have it done, it's called pharmacogenetics. And it looks at how you metabolize drugs based on your genes. And so steroid hormones, oh my God, they're like elves and they're going like here, take them, throw them out. You get nothing. And so the answer is, I love that someone told me to eat carbohydrates. Oh, so if I eat cookies, I can bring down my SHBG. Wonderful. Or I can do what I had to fight to do and write my own prescription and study the pharmacokinetics. Testosterone, I started taking testosterone, and that will likely bring down my sex hormone binding globulin 30 or 40%, let's hope. And then, the estrogen will start to sneak through. Instead of being bound up, sex hormone binding globulin, what it does is that it grabs the estradiol, the little molecule, and it keeps it from being able to get to its receptor, which is how it does its work. And so it just sails it out of the body. Oh, wonderful. And so this doctor, this is so egregious. All she cared about is, it's called practicing defensive medicine. She's very nice to me. I appreciate her she's the only one who's, she consulted her boss or boss's boss to give me the 2 patches. Really? Come on. I don't get it. Like, I need it. Insane. So she said, she tests me, she ran a test, not the right one, didn't test free estradiol. So, okay, we're looking, it's my estradiol is bound. So this is like 17 and it's bound. So I'm getting probably 0 estradiol. This is not safe, not healthy, and really not appreciated by me. And so she says, oh, we don't need to test further because it's, the 17 figure. Okay, the fact that it's not 100, that's not the only important thing. Like, that's just for your fear. I mean, that, like, how terrible. I'm not getting the estradiol, and then, I mean, it's so insane. And she, none of these doctors, they don't want to harm you. They're just ignorant. They're not trained. It's egregious. And, until then, I wrote this book because women deserve to have evidence-based care. And the only way they're going to get it is to read the science for themselves. I wrote it in the clearest language humanly possible. I don't even say what GABA, I use the medical name once. I call it Mr. GABA. I'm sort of funny and vulgar, sorry, for anyone who's offended by that. So you can understand the science for yourself, make decisions according to your values. Not all women will want to take hormones. I think that it's important to get beyond our prejudice the same way I was prejudiced. I'm from a family that's very conservative about drugs, where it was all estrogen, Satan, I'm never taking that. Well, that was not scientific, and it's healthy and protective, so I'm taking it. These things, to look at things that with scientific, eye on things. And so women can use my book. What women have been doing, and actually makes me cry. They take my book to the doctor, like screenshots or something, and they use the science, that they show the doctor the science, and they're getting evidence-based care. They're getting the amount of progesterone they actually need, where he's here, we have the 100 or 200 doctors prescribed, and to show like, look, that's not because they tested against 300 and it's better. They've been taking 300 milligrams in France since 1980. Women are not getting sick from this. It rises, progesterone rises 10 times the amount of menstrual cycle during pregnancy. Women are not dropping dead during pregnancy because they've got the naturally elevated progesterone.
Wow. It's absolutely fascinating. When you look out and you do this very well, but like you look out and you see the system and how this works and the doctors, and we're not blaming the doctors, right? Like I hear all the time that it's a shame that doctors don't get more nutrition education in medical school. And I push back against that because for me, I'd rather have most doctors be uninformed than have them probably be misinformed. They're probably going to get the worst information about nutrition anyway, and just feel like they know the most about it. So they might even be more closed off anyway. So we're not saying it's like the doctor's fault. Who's to blame for all of this mess? Was it the study? I mean, like, yeah,
Oh, no. This is medicine. And I left out the two, because this is such a complex subject, and I'm so outraged all the time at what goes on that I get on tangents. So I forgot to say the third problem. So no training in diagnostic reasoning. And doctors are not taught to correctly be able to calculate your level of risk from something. So they will use, if you ask, they might use stats from a pharmaceutical rep. Oh, it's called relative risk. It's this not intended to, it doesn't tell you anything about your risk. It's an epidemiological comparison of one group to the other. So let's say 50% more, whatever. Well, they're just comparing groups. They're not saying this is your risk of getting the disease. It's terrible. And so this is medicine. This medicine itself is two things: medical education and institutions. And I was angry at my doctor initially when my gynecologist, who's such a lovely guy, I mean, he listens to you. He really gets who you are. I tell every pregnant woman, because that's his specialty, delivering babies, like, he's your guy. He really knows who you are, listens. It is called informed, it's called shared decision making. When someone does that they listen to you and they propose things that fit with your values, and it's just vital. It wasn't his fault. He's not trained. That's a secret of gynecology departments. It's horrible. They don't disclose this. The ethical thing for every doctor who is not trained to do would be to say, I'm sorry, this is not my area. I need to refer you to someone else, but there's nobody. And the menopause experts they say they have, oh my God, what a joke. They're trained by the Menopause Society. Here in California, we have traffic school. If you get a ticket, you have to do this like online comedy traffic school. It's an online course and then a multiple choice test. So Menopause Society gives basically traffic school for your ovaries. There's an online course. You need 45 hours of continuing medical ed in general women's health. Only 15 of that have to be in perimenopause and menopause. This is why the doctors, when they talk to me on the phone, that they say these things and it's just like, no, this is wrong. And then they take this multiple choice test, then they're declared certified menopause experts. And oh my God, are they not? This one of them, one of the many gynecologists who refused to give me the treatment that I obviously need. I mean, hi, my estrogen 2 patches at 17. Really, ladies, come on. She told me that my estrogen, the reason for the low estrogen was that I had tachyphylaxis. Now, this means that you become habituated to like cold medicine, some that's not part of your body. You don't get habituated to a hormone in the human body. I mean, Jesus. Sorry for anyone who's like, I have a Christian friend who's like he church going and everything. And every time I do that, I feel bad. And he's like, anyway. But that's the thing. Like, this is so terrible. So doctors, they don't know. And what medical institutions, they have all these doctors who've been churned out of medical schools, scientifically ignorant, not able to read the studies, statistically ignorant, not able to diagnose you properly, with no course in diagnostic reasoning. They're expected to sort of pick it up by osmosis. Now, maybe some learn, but probably, most aren't trained to do it in a way, this rigorous way that you see on Dr. House, and so doctors are victims of this too, because they want to treat patients. They want to help their patients. They're not, doctors are not sociopaths. And people say about doctors, like people say about mine, first they'll say, Oh, that he's only in it. Like it's all about the money. Yeah. I go to Kaiser. He's not getting a Ferrari for treating me. He gets the same amount of money, whether he, like whatever he does or says, it's not going to change, and so this is not an argument. And, what medical institutions need to do is backstop the medical ignorance. These doctors who don't know the first thing about science, and really it's every area. My primary care doctor, my God. Okay, you're going to love this because you probably know what this is. I mean, it's horrible. He diagnosed me with familial hypercholesterolemia.
Oh my goodness, no.
This is so insane. Okay, so unlike that doctor, I did 3 chapters in cardiology. I'm really terrified of getting anything wrong because people's health, you could be harmed. I had my book heavily fact checked. I told people really be mean to me, hand me my ass, like, and then I told them again, like, are you sure you got, because that's responsible. I did this to help people, not to like make errors. So anyway, I've read Broom. These are the standards: Broom, Dutch Lipid Network, and MedPed. I know them very well. So people who have this, the standards are, you have what are called xanthomas. So I would have this okay, my fingernails are gross, but there are no yellow fatty deposits on my knuckles or anything. I had corneal endothelium transplant, but I do not have a corneal arcus. That's a white or grayish circle under your eye. So in my family, they don't drop dead. First of all, there's some stuff I've read, like if you have this high cholesterol, it's actually you live longer, but I don't read that area.
It's true. No, it's true. Actually, so with FH, it's a genetic disease, and as a child, it's way more likely that you're going to die, and you're going to die of a heart attack, which is very unfortunate. We know like 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds. Yeah. So, but what happens though is as you age, once you cross about 30 or 40, if you live with familial hypercholesterolemia, your chances of living actually go up. And the likelihood of you dying from cancer, for example, is actually much lower the further along you go, which raises some interesting questions about maybe some of the protective factors of cholesterol and why we might want in certain situations cholesterol to be high. It
the idea that
the
causes
opposite direction.
Yeah, sorry, the idea that cholesterol causes heart disease is so idiotic.
Bananas.
If you people who don't understand the first thing about physiology, it's so stupid. It's not been proved, and we see, I mean, there's strong evidence that that heart disease is caused by insulin resistance, inflammation, and that, eating this high carbohydrate diet, don't eat that. And then your stats, I mean, my triglycerides, this is what's so funny that they said this about me. Like, basically, I'm going to die of a heart attack. My triglycerides are 30. Like, my HDL is, this is a wrong measure because I got the steroids that she gave me for my eye transplant. I couldn't read the research because I do something on the book till the last second. So I read it like a week after I started taking the steroids. She gave me like an overdose of steroids, basically. But what was I going to say about this? Oh, wait, I lost my train of thought. Crap. I know the steroids. So steroids cause some lasting harm for a while. And I had my HDL was 79 instead of 102. It's usually like 102. So I think that that's wrong, but still 79 and 30, my ratio. So, like you're not going to be, your sort of normal is 4. I'm 0.4. Everything's like that. All my stats are like stellar. If anyone knows LPA, that's lipoprotein A, if you're under 30, I think that that's good. Mine's 10. I'm like, hello, that's the genetic thing, that, and then your triglycerides, HDL, pattern LDL. But anyway, so the other thing is that your family, this is the stat that they have, that your family, they, have very high cholesterol and drop dead of heart disease. Okay, my family die of things, but grandpa climbing his apple tree at 98, dad 95, they did not die of heart disease. My mother, in fact, she unfortunately was an early adopter of health food, which means Pritikin diet. Oh my God, I think it actually contributed to her death. She had very low lipids, very unhealthy. And so, this is not a factor. So what happened was this guy, is it Jeffrey Daniel Scott? I think is his name. I like to mention this because, this guy read my medical record. They send an algorithm, sends him, here are some data from this patient. And so he looks at my thyroid and my liver enzymes and says, "Oh, these are in good shape. Yes, I'm very healthy. Okay, thanks." And so she has this, and she has high LDL. This must be okay. This is heart disease risk. Okay, this guy never spoke to me, never met me. Now, if he had talked to me, what he would have found out, he prescribed me a statin, never having spoken to me, met me, no informed consent. That's where you tell the patient, here's what the diagnosis is and why, and do you agree to take this drug? None of that. So I have to report him to the state. This is a violation of California state law, medical ethics. It's disgusting. And so, this idea that I would take a statin, I mean, it's horrible. So anyway, what was I'm leaving one thing out. Oh, so if he had talked to me, I would have said, I eat a carnivore diet. I'm clearing a lot of fat, and if you look at what he didn't do, look at my entire metabolic health system. You don't look at one lab number, idiot, moron. Seriously, these amazing, I have CRP of 0.3. I mean, everything's like that, and doctors, this is so horrible. Doctors don't know to test not just ApoB, but ApoA1. ApoB is a meaningless measure used to prescribe people drugs. It's context-free. So the ratio tells you, do I have a problem or not? And no, my ratio is excellent and my ApoB is high. Well, whatever. And if you look at my my medical stats, I got a useless, ridiculous, wasteful particle size test for LDL. Now, I know with my triglycerides, 30, you don't need this, but I did it to be a practice defensive patienting, that I thought they're going to say I have heart disease risk. Okay, pattern A. And guess what? I know to have them test HDLP, the HDL particles too, because HDL is the janitor, like, got to clear you guys out, and so good HDLP, I think, is 6,000. Mine's 12,000. Okay. Everything's like that. I'm as likely to die of a heart attack as I am to be kicked in the knee by a unicorn. Yet these morons, they won't take this off my chart. I feel like I've been wasteful. I wrote a 30-page HIPAA records change request. They're not changing my record. I'm like too busy. They have to appeal to the state and Jesus Christ. And it impacts, so all these gynecologists think I have heart disease risk. Meanwhile, the system calculates based on my faulty, wrong, invented diagnosis of familial hypercholesterolemia. That thinks that, you've got this family, this is bad. So Kaiser prints out my risk of heart disease over 10 years, 1.2%. Okay, I'm sorry, the elevate, what? And that's wrong. It's probably 0. Oh, and by the way, I get a lung x-ray because there was some horrible, I never get colds probably because of the way I eat, or genes lucky, or, I'm a hermit. I don't know. I don't leave the house much because I'm writing with this book for many years. But I go to the Premier Coddling in American Mind. Someone there gave me the worst respiratory infection. A lot of people got it. So I have to get a lung x-ray. Sorry, I made that too long a story. But the guy says, he's the guy who reads my mammograms. I saw his name. I was like, oh, good. He said, there's no coronary artery plaque. Okay, so wait, what are we treating here? We're treating, my lab number upsets you, does it? Oh, because you're ignorant of science. This, and my primary care doctor is one of the best primary care doctors in Kaiser. He asks you what tests, can I give you this test? And then he sends it to you. And so he asked me about ApoB. And I said, I will only allow that if you test ApoA1, these things. So that's good. And he listens, and you can, say, but here's the reasoning for this. And he'll, be open-minded more than doctors will, but he still believes that I have heart disease risk. God. I mean, like, really crazy.
Well, this is why we're so grateful for people like you and for Gary and for Nina, who are journalists and are outsiders. And it's so interesting to think back on.
I'm not a journalist. I will tell you that. Sorry to interrupt you. No, but you're I'm an investigative science writer. Journalists are respectful on a level I am not. And I've never, I've not done that writing for papers. I wrote a column, science-based column for creators, love, dating, sex, relationships, some dietary advice, because, that was what I wrote. Papers died, too many papers died to continue it. But that was, where I started in this. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. But that's why we're so grateful for all of your work, because you take the time to get this out, and rather than try to change the system, which is not going to change anytime soon.
I am trying to change this
from the ground up, getting this in the hands of other women who are suffering, to have them then take that book, your book, to their doctors, is the way that we can get some change on the individual level. And hopefully, like you said, yes, maybe we can change the system.
This guy wrote me, this is the kind of husband to be. His wife was really sick in perimenopause. He read my book to her. And there's an audiobook, by the way, Carrington McDuffie. She's a singer. I cast her myself. I used to produce commercials. I cast Eartha Kitt for a Hardee's Fish Sticks commercial. If any of you are old enough to know she is, she was Catwoman. She's amazing, brilliant, really smart, cool woman. Anyway, so I had this woman, she's a singer and just so smart and great and has a voice you want to listen to. So she reads the audiobook, but this guy read it to his wife, and then they went to the doctor and they got her a prescription, and it saved their sex life. I mean, this is amazing. He told me, he tweets this to me. He's on, if you look at my Twitter replies, I mean, this is like the most beautiful thing. This is why I wrote the book. And, this is really important to me that people get this care, but also within that, I do the, j'accuse of medicine, saying, that I took this apart because this is what I do. I applied science. This is science turned into practical advice, science turned into policy. And what needs to happen is medical schools, this is obscene, morally wrong, that they don't teach doctors diagnostic reasoning, risk calculation, which, by the way, you can learn in 90 minutes from this guy, Gerd Gegerenzer, who is the Harding Center for Risk Analysis, and psychologist Max Planck. He's awesome, and I know how to do it. Use natural frequencies. What is that? Okay, instead of percentages, we humans didn't evolve with percentages. We evolved with like, oh, look at, there are a bunch of people. How many? Draw 100 people on a sheet, color in the ones that'll die from the thing, and then your individual health risk. Okay, so we're going to color in 2 more. Okay, this is your risk. You show that to the patient, like, 4 people out of 100, and what's your likelihood, whatever. So this is not rocket science to learn. When Gerd Gegerenzer does a workshop, I think for 90 minutes, like 90% of the doctors can do this at the end. Okay, med schools, hello. And then medicine, like the institutions, they've got a bunch of doctors who graduated from med school who don't know the essentials, who can't read the science, don't have time. So they need to have people reading the science. This is what I propose in my chapter 2 of my book, like me. These, people who are like, we're like mole rats of science, leave no stone unturned. And then you have people like Sandra Greenland who, to look at the stats and things. Like, I look at the stats and I can see, flaws and error and but you're somebody who's a statistician look at them to make sure that you're okay on everything. And then that's how the treatments will be decided. Like, okay, so this is what the evidence says. So you don't have doctors doing what happened to me. Like, I think it was 2000 or 2002, they found that knee surgery, arthroscopic knee surgery for people like me with wear and tear injuries in midlife, not, if you have one hip shorter, that's different. But if you're just, been using your knees and running, whatever, that surgery is worthless. It does not resolve your pain. It doesn't do anything except cost you money, lay you up, and put you at risk, because all surgery has risk. So in 2016, a Kaiser doctor, I have a real pain in my knees, which I solved through science. That's actually the next book. I have a book on osteoporosis that's next. I solved that using the evidence. And but before that, he said, oh, well, number one, stay off of it. Don't run anymore. That was wrong advice, number one. Number two, and that sounds counterintuitive. This is what the science says, that you almost don't believe it. Jumping, like that's the exercise that makes helps you have the pain go away. I mean, I didn't believe it. I thought, like Gary Taubes was like, wait, I'm going to eat bacon and eggs. I'm going to die. I mean, you know that, like, it from your life, but even though the science. So the guy says, if your pain doesn't go away, we can do arthroscopic, this laparoscopic, sorry, I got arthroscopic wrong, laparoscopic knee surgery. And I thought, not me, you can't, because I read the study, 16 years ago, how dare you? I didn't say that to him, but I was like, because you can't be rude to doctors, and if you need like a prescription or something, it's just not smart. Even though I have to admit, with these 10 gynecologists denied me care, I was just so afraid that I wouldn't get the estradiol I needed. That one of them is so horrible, Jessica Lee Rosenblum. I have to say this because they need to be called out. She goes back in my patient notes. I wrote this thing to her boss saying, like, here's what you got wrong. And so she goes back in the patient treatment notes, revises them. It says she has labored speech at the beginning. Yeah, I have ADHD. And you know what is that? It's worse when I'm afraid that a doctor's not going to give me care because she's an ignoramus who doesn't know the research, and so labored speech. How dare you? And then at the end, she should continue with psychiatric care. This is this trope This is used against women. I actually have a psychiatrist because I get ADHD meds. He's the one science-based doctor I have. I love him. And he saw my ignorant primary care doctor before this one put something about like diagnosing with anxiety. What? Okay, he has no training in psychiatry or psychology or anything. How dare you? What happened was he used 45 minutes for an appointment, which was incredibly disrespectful, didn't tell me. And I said to the nurse, I'm leaving, and so and then, when he was in there, I know he was another one who asked me why I wasn't on statins. I think I might've yelled a little, because there's no benefit for all-cause mortality for women. And because I have I don't need them, crazy stuff. And so my psychiatrist saw that. He said, if you're okay with this, I want to take this out, because if you go to an emergency room, there's that thing where they say that women, it's just in your head, and this is likely to happen to you, more likely if this is there. Yeah, please take it out, that kind of thing. And so I got on this tangent here, but, so all of medicine, it's all like this. And we need someone to do what I did in every field. Doctors need, I know where I was going. Sorry. I'm rambling because there's so much to say. So the doctors who do the corneal endothelium transplants, endothelium, you have one in your arteries, in your eye, it's this one cell layer, on your cornea that is basically the plumber of the eye. So when you have fluid buildup, it releases the fluids. Mine, thanks, Mom, has a genetic disease it's called Fuchs dystrophy. I call it fuck you dystrophy. I get all more fun. And so the doctor, I have an elite surgeon. I'm lucky to have her. I can tell, I assess medical care for a living, and I could tell from her medical prudence when my first transplant was and holding on part of it. She wanted to wait a week. She wasn't, just going to do the second procedure, which, by the way, is Clockwork Orange. It's horrible. They put a gas bubble in your eye.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
So she waits. Here's the thing. This doctor, she is prescribing steroids and eye drops for patients. They have no training in immunology, in the HPA axis of the brain. I do that because it's your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Your hypothalamic is like your hypothalamus is like your bubby. That's Jewish for grandma. It's like your bubby, like, you hot, you cold, you eating enough, and so it looks for those things, and it tells the pituitary, hello, we need some drinkage of water here, and we need to have some water coursing through the system. So the pituitary sends out some chemical messages, the adrenal glands, cortisol is not, the idea that cortisol is Satan. No, it's healthy and necessary in healthy amounts, and so what happens when you prescribe someone an overdose of steroids is you shut down their HPA axis, you shut down their ability to heal, their healthy inflammation. Like, I'm metabolically healthy, so you don't prescribe me a huge dose of steroids, if you know. And then you also shut down their mitochondria. Like, my mitochondria, they're like in a grave, from taking 8 drops of prednisolone acetate in my eye. The field standard is 4. And you think, oh, that's because someone tested it. No, they didn't. That's this clinical habit for no reason. Wow. And prednisolone acetate has systemic effects. Now, I said this to her. She told me I'd have to take steroids, and she prescribes them for patients for lifetime. That is terrible. And I said, she said, first of all, oh, the eye kind, it doesn't have systemic effects. I was like, okay, yeah, that's really did you not take physiology med school? There's something called the punctal gland. It opens to your sinuses. Anything you put in your eye goes like, whoosh, and so you can do this thing called punctal occlusion, which I'm really clumsy about. You stick your thumb there, so as little as possible gets through. I was so sick from these stars. I fainted. It's called orthostatic hypotension. I like to use those words with doctors because it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, which I do, but it sounds more impressive. Just so I'm hot shit in science. Just listen, because I know the science. You don't just do what I say. So, and then I have tachycardia and bradycardia every day for months. That's dangerously high and dangerously low heartbeat. And now I'm not jogging. I'm sitting on my couch. My heartbeat per minute goes to 177. Hi, really? This is horrible. And so I read the science during the week when I was waiting to see if my transplant would hold. That's all I did the entire week. I did nothing else. Didn't go anywhere, nothing. I got up to the bathroom and go to bed. And I realized okay, no, what I need you to do is prescribe me Lotamax ointment, that doesn't have the systemic effects, that sits more in your eye. And I need a lower dose and everything, all this. The 8 drops she gave me. Her idea was 4 drops is good. 8 drops is better. Oh my God. And so she doesn't have time to know all these things. Kaiser needs to provide a panel of experts in these areas, like real experts, not just, they have these panels now. They just rubber stamp what they've always been doing. It's terrible. Someone who knows what I do, like at least knows what I do. And, I've helped so many people. I'm like this good fairy of medicine. If you're on the phone and you're nice and you help me and you sound open to it, I will tell you some fact about something that will help you. And so this guy, he is customer service guy, so nice. And I think there's an accounting system that we need to keep. If you complain about things when they're bad, well, how dare you not say when they're good? And so someone on the phone who sounds smart, if they're smart and they're kind, they tried to help me, even if they didn't help me, but they tried. I'll say you're really kind and smart and it makes a difference. I heard you on the phone. I didn't immediately think, when you hear the cold, dead eyes of the person. And I said, I'm sure people don't tell you that, blah, blah, blah. So wait, where was I going with this? This guy. So I say to him, you really helped me. I've been, struggling a lot because I had a serious eye surgery. He said, oh, I did too. His glaucoma caused by his doctor. I'm pretty sure from what he told me. So horrible. So I say to him, can you look at your eye drops and see if they have something called back preservatives, is benzalkonium something, probably chloride. Anyway, this is a preservative that begins eroding the cornea in a matter of days. They give this to everybody because the doctors don't know. I mean, seriously, they ban this in Europe. It's in the eye drops and the antibiotics. So I say to my doctor, this is why I wanted Lotamax ointment. Doesn't have the preservative, and so I ask her for, instead of afloxacin, drug names, I asked for moxifloxacin because it's generic, same price, has broader spectrum protection. Hi, really? Could someone read a paper? And it doesn't have the preservatives. And she's a little irritated, but she's a good doctor and cares about her patients. She said something like, it's your body or something. Because Lotamax, the ointment, by the way, it isn't as validated as the drops, which have more systemic effects. But see, I read the science and I thought, I'm going to be okay on this. I'm taking the Lotamax ointment. I'm really careful because I consider it a great gift. I'm an organ donor, although they're going to be like, throw those eyeballs in the trash, lady. But the rest of me, I plan to die in an emergency room or visiting a friend in the hospital who's in bed with monitors and everything. Get her liver, that. And so you don't have a transplant. Someone's giving you their eyes after death, they're part of their eyes. I call it aftermarket parts. And then disrespect that by not being careful, and so I wouldn't have done something careless. And my eyes, I had the healing when I didn't have that huge dose when I, second time around. I mean, it's really, really horrible. And that the doctor she thinks there are no systemic effects. And then I said, what about healthy inflammation? She said, oh, there isn't healthy inflammation. And I was so sort of thrown by oh, wait, I have a genetic disease. This is thing that my mother had, that I was just heard that. And I thought well, you're an idiot on these things. And, I didn't quite pay attention. I'm used to doctors not knowing the science. And this is really terrible. And so she needs a panel. They need to have lectures from people who know this stuff and have a team dedicated to that at Kaiser. Kaiser's so irresponsible for not having that. It's really, really horrible. So this is the stuff that goes on in all of our medical care, every area. And that's the serious betrayal of every patient, where you go to the doctor. It is highly unlikely that doctors, with some exceptions, base what they do in evidence. And it's egregious.
Well, this is why your work is so amazing. And even though it's focused primarily on menopause and perimenopause, and yes, we love all the panels and all the information from the other people, at least you're doing your part in getting this message out there. I want to
add, because I want men to read my book. Osteoporosis also, that's the huge amount of bullshit. The bone mineral density is a sign of health. No, this is there's so much is in that area. Sorry to interrupt. You're doing this.
No, that's perfect. No, glad you added that. I was just gonna say, I've really loved the conversation and getting you wound up about certain things. I absolutely love.
It's been so hard, actually.
I love it. Amy, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work? Where can they find the Substack, and also where can they find your book and all the rest of your books?
Going Menopostal. Okay, the book is Going Menopostal: What You and Your Doctor Need to Know About the Real Science of Menopause and Perimenopause. This is on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. There's a Nook, there's a Kindle, there's an audiobook on both Amazon and Barnes and Noble with Carrington McDuffie. It's really excellent. Please, if you buy the book and you like it, review it on Amazon. I really need reviews. There have been no print pieces about my book through no fault of my own, I will say. And this is really terrible because it hasn't gotten out there. There's a reason for this. I'm working on getting fixed. But I really need people to tell women, like if you have a friend who doesn't read, tell them what's in the book. And this is really terrible. I actually will tell people, because this is a mission and I'm an idiot financially. I tell people, okay, if you can't afford the book, you can steal it. But I prefer you don't, because I really, been living on, I lived on my savings to do this, which is really dumb,
Wow.
and or get it out of the library, but I want people to have this information, is because it's horrible. We don't, it's horrible.
Yeah. Well, I can tell how passionate you are about that. Are there any other social media links you want me to link up
Sorry,
as
I
well?
forgot Substack. Okay, so I tweet a lot about Israel on Twitter. So if that's disturbing to you, don't follow me there. But I also tweet about menopause and perimenopause. So I would say my Substack, and you can subscribe. It's subscribers at amyalkon.net. Subscribers at amyalkon.net. And then I'm not very good at posting on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook too. You could and LinkedIn. I post stuff on LinkedIn that's sort of, good, serious stuff also. And so on my Substack, you can also, I'll have the thing where you can ask me questions, and I'll cover men as well as women. It's not just women, it's very important. Everybody's health will be covered in this. So, and also other
Wow.
questions like relationships and stuff. That's my original bailiwick. So.
It really was.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so we'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes. And for now, Amy,
Awesome.
we're just so grateful for you and your time, taking time out of your day to chat with us today. I had a blast, and I know the listeners going to get a lot out of this. Like we've mentioned many times, this is so important to get this information out, and you're doing just that and doing it in a way that's really passionate. So thank you so very much for all of the work you do, and thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. You too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.